Hello everyone, welcome to the self-knowledge lectures. Today we have the lecture number 27 of the phase A of the self-knowledge course that we see every Wednesdays and Fridays. And today we are going to see this, everyone, interesting lecture in which we are going to learn a technique to dissolve the ego, the I, or the psychological self. We have studied in all the previous lectures how is our ego the one that has conditioned 97% of our essence, how our ego is the cause that we are in this state of sleeping consciousness, and it is the cause of all the spiritual misery and also the material misery. And in the previous lecture, in the world of relationships, we were studying how is actually our ego the cause that we have a bad relationship with our physical body. So we have constant diseases, ailments, and it's the reason why we don't have a good relationship with our external world and with our inner being. So we are starting to understand the importance of eliminating the psychological self, which is the ego. And in this lecture, we are going to see today, we are going to be learning this very interesting technique that is, or it can be named death in March, or it can be named ongoing death, or dying in myself from moment to moment. Just like the elimination of our ego from every one of its details, from every little detail of the ego. And let's see that this is the objective of today's lecture, to learn this technique to dissolve the psychological I. And we are going to see that applying this technique on our daily basis will allow us to achieve the scientific chastity, which is the balance of the centers. That is what will allow us to get to ignite in us sacred fire of the Kundalini, get to start creating the existential bodies of the being, because the raw material for those internal creations to be achieved in us is in all those essences that we manage to free from the depth of each one of the details of our ego, of our psychological selves. So let's start by studying this topic. As I always say, if you have any question, you can leave your questions there in the chat, and I will be solving any question that you have. First, allow me just a second to fix something here in the video, because I can see that it is having problems. Just a second. Let me check. I think it's better now. Okay, let me put this here so I see. Okay, so let's explain why are we going to talk about this. Actually, this chapter is esoterically entitled Death, because the one who begins to disintegrate his psychological defects, begins to get out of the circle where all the humanity is involved, and that circle of pain and pleasure, doing something and receiving back the consequences, and in a total unconscious way. So when they are going to invite that person that is getting out of that circle by practicing the psychological death to commit a mistake, the person's as the person just denies, right? Because it's like awakening his consciousness, the people say that it is useless, that is a dead person, because that person doesn't follow the path of the rest of humanity. For example, we are with our relatives or with friends, and someone comes and treats us roughly or says something offensive to us that should hurt our pride, and that in other state, without being practicing the psychological death, would make us react with anger, for example. But as we are like self-observing from moment to moment, eliminating all the little details of those psychological defects that wants to manifest in us, so we are liberating our consciousness and saving our energy, then we are going to react in front of that situation in a totally different way. We are not going to allow those words to harm us, because we understand that the only one that can be harmed in us by those words is our pride, and we are eliminating that pride, right? And we are eliminating our anger, and we are going to react in that situation in a conscious way, and our relatives or friends can actually think that we are like weird, right? Like, because we are not reacting as we are supposed to do so. Or we are at work, let's say we are with our coworkers, and an opportunity rises in which we can take like advantage of some shady business. But what we do, we self-observe, we can see all the desires that are emerging in us. We are judging ourselves obviously. We refuse to participate in that, and everyone is going to think that we are like a dead person. We are not like doing what is a normal person supposed to do. And it is because we begin, or we are starting to die to the ego, and we start to become alive for the consciousness. So for all those who want to continue living in the ego, we will be dead. We will be insensitive, because we no longer react mechanically to the desires of our ego as everyone else does. And that is something like very, very important. Something that is important for us to understand, to get like into the technique, is that every human being carries within himself a divine spark, which is called soul, or is called also like burata in other countries, or can be named as the essence. It has even names. So in reality, it is a divine spark that we all have inside, and that drive us and give us like strength to undertake this spiritual work, like the one that we are teaching here in this course. But what happens that essence, which is our soul, is trapped in all of our evils, in all of our psychological selves, which are esoterically called the ego, which are the ones that don't allow us, or that don't allow this essence, which is 97% of our consciousness, to manifest freely, because they take at every moment the spokesperson. They like command the human vehicle, this human machine that is our physical body. So they feed on that energy and they manifest, not letting our consciousness to manifest. And with the work of the disintegration of the defects, that is a psychological death, this essence is going to be growing and is going to become stronger. And why? Because every time that you manage to eliminate from you a small detail of your ego, be it in your thoughts, be it in your emotion, in a sensation in your body, in your sex, in everywhere that you can find a little detail of the ego, and you eliminate it, you are freeing a small spark of your consciousness. And that way, that soul is becoming like stronger and growing. And the same way, it is like manifesting more clearly, in us, and with more force. So remember that we were talking in the lecture number 11 about how to fabricate soul and spirit. And well, we were saying that the soul is a set of virtues, powers, faculties, forces that we have latent inside of us, but that it is like, or they are conditioned and trapped within the ego. So as long as we are eliminating all our psychological defects, we are going to be developing the soul, and with the soul, the forces, powers, faculties, and virtues of our consciousness. So as we are doing this work of the psychological death, this essence is becoming a soul. It's really becoming a soul. Now, there is another divine spark in us that is called a divine mother. This one is part of our 3% of free and conscious essence, so it is not trapped within the ego. And the mission of this part of our consciousness is to come to disintegrate our psychological defects with like a spear that she possesses. That is actually, that spear represents our sexual energy. And no matter how little the detail, the divine, we must ask, our divine mother to eliminate it by mentally saying, my mother, eliminate this defect or disintegrate this defect, however you feel comfortable, by asking her. And well, she will do it because that is like her mission. That is the mission of this part of our consciousness, to help us in this way to free ourselves. We can see that this part of our consciousness has been represented in different cultures in different ways, as you can see here, but it's all the time like being represented doing this, eliminating the psychological defects that are represented in the dragon and the different heads of Legion. You can see here different representations. It's the very same force that live within each one of us. Okay, so now let's explain what this detail is about. We are going to use the help of this part of our consciousness, which is our psychological defect, to our divine mother, to get to eliminate all the details of our ego. And the technique is called the details. We are going to see that we can compare the ego and its functioning with a tree. And by making this comparison, we will understand what is probably the most effective technique to get rid of all of our ego. So I'm going to give you an example. You see this tree, and this tree is, as you can see here, standing on its main roots. But what happens that these main roots that all trees have, they don't actually feed the tree, but they support the tree against the winds and against the weight of the same weight of the tree, so as not to fall, so as not to collapse. And it has very small roots that are almost like little hair, sometimes very thin, and they are the ones that go and spread throughout the rest of the earth, and they absorb the sap, the nutrients of the earth, to feed the tree. And well, actually, so is the ego of all of us, of all the humanity. The thick roots that support the tree is like our ego, right? And those thick roots, symbolize the capital defects, such as laziness, greed, lust, pride, anger, gluttony, envy, etc. They are the 7 heads of Legion, also known as the 7 deadly sins, which are the main defects. They are there supporting the tree, but they are not actually the ones that are feeding the tree. We are going to see that the tree of the ego also have very small roots that symbolize the details. Those very small manifestations that belong to this or to that defect. Any of those heads is subdivided into thousands of small details that manifest in us. So we don't believe that they are defects, but that they are actually feeding the ego. And the ego is like the tree spread, but all those tiny details that we all have like in great quantity, and they manifest through our centers to come to steal our energy and to throughout our consciousness. So they manifest, as I was saying, in our minds, in our emotion, in our sex, the actions that we do. And sometimes they are details so small that we don't give them importance, or sometimes they are details or things that we consider to be good. And as we have understood that being good is the right thing, we never get to judge when we are being good. So we never get to find what is behind that supposed goodness. And well, that is something that we must like start also seeing. Remember that the tree of the wisdom, or yeah, the tree of the wisdom is the tree of the good and evil, because we have good defects and bad defects, and we need to get to eliminate both of those poles to achieve the wisdom, to rescue the wisdom, and to awaken our consciousness. So all those details can be, as I was saying, some little details that we most of the times don't give importance to them. However, we don't realize the amount of energy that is being stolen from us, and we don't realize that it is each one of these small manifestations what gives strength to the great manifestations of our ego. For example, small details as sarcasm, as negative thoughts, as resentments, or as a manifestation of impatience, or a little manifestation of intolerance, they are actually feeding the root, the thick root that is the anger. And those small details are feeding and feeding our anger until we get to one point that this anger is so like fed that we end up committing a violent manifestation or action, or saying violent words that gets to really harm others, and to sorry that it is like hard for me to translate and to explain this what I'm trying to say. And well, the thing is that when you get to feed your anger so much, then you end up committing a mistake because of anger and receiving back the consequences because of karma. So we need to start like observing how the small details are the ones that are feeding those thick roots. Small details like morbid thoughts, or like curiosity of lewdness, or fantasizing sexual things, or watching certain videos that are more like porn, right? But we don't see like that hard. Actually, they are feeding our lust, and thus each one of those defects is in turn maintaining and supporting that tree that is the ego, because it's all the time with every manifestation of these little details we are like feeding the tree. The tree is all the time like getting bigger, right? And well, what happens that we have, as you can see here, many negative details, such as picking up a coin from the floor that doesn't belong to us, to keep it. We think that it has no value at all, but that is a small detail of greed that we usually don't pay attention to. And well, in relation to greed, we can say like greed is like one of those thick roots, but actually it has like many details that we can get to self-observe. Like for example, the thief one, which is the one who takes things that doesn't belong to him, like in the case of that little coin that we just pick up. Or we have as greed a collaborator, which is like a good detail, because when we give money, we actually feel ourselves to be good, but we don't see that most of the time what we are doing is we are wasting money, with the excuse of helping others, but for things that are not really necessary, or if we really get to like observe um, or to reflect on that, we are going to see that that help is going to help that person to degenerate even more. Like for example, we know that someone is asking for money, but it's for um, taking drugs, for example, and you know it, but you, oh my God, how am I going to deny my brother or my cousin or my friend or whatever? And we are giving the money. We are not acting in a conscious way, but as we are collaborating, we think that we are doing a good thing, and actually it is just a defect, a manifestation of our ego, because consciousness, when consciousness manifests, it knows when it's like correct to give and when it is not. Another detail of the greed can be like the worker one, and that is the one who wakes most of his time working just to obtain material benefits and lives like in the background, dedicating time to what is truly important, which is to awaken the consciousness. So that person never decides to start working on himself because he has no time, because he needs to work, to have money, to feed his family and stuff. And that is a small detail of the greed that can take us to waste our entire existence without achieving the purpose for which we came here, just looking and looking for money. So you can see very details here of the greed, and that in that way, if you like reflect on this, you are going to see like how each of these details are just fitting in a small way that big root, which is the greed, and the greed is like supporting the ego. So the important thing to advance in the interior work is to make the effort from moment to moment to observe each of the small details of the ego that are manifesting in us, and ask the Divine Mother for the elimination of each one of them. That is the real important thing. So we must begin to self-observe ourselves, so we get to see the thousands and thousands of negative details that we have, which are the ones that are continue make it like have us here in this state that we have, and we must start to take away the food from that tree, which are the tiny roots, the negative details such as bad thoughts, as feelings of hatred, as and the envy that one feels against other people when they are going good, when they are going or doing good, and you feel like that bad thing. But if you let that thing there, you are giving energy to that detail, to that ego, or that to that great tree. If you, on the contrary, when you feel that bad feeling, when you see someone doing good or better than you, then you ask your Divine Mother to eliminate that, you are actually taking away the food that the ego was trying to steal from you, which is your energy at that moment. Or details as ambition, as I was saying, taking insignificant things, or telling lies. Sometimes we tell lies and we don't see like what is the incorrect like part in that. Actually, now we need to start like observing details. Saying words full of pride are details, and we do that all the time. And well, in short, all the things that are deep down very, very negative, one must begin to seriously disintegrate them. Okay, and that way the tree doesn't grow anymore, but rather it becomes like malnutried, and it dries up, and that is like our goal. And the tree of the consciousness, which is the tree of our being, is going to be formed in us, and is going to start growing, and is and getting stronger. So what we are teaching here is for you to put it into practice from moment to moment, to take it to the facts wherever we go. Are you going to work? Whatever you are doing, you must be in self-observation, paying attention to your mind, to what is going on in your mind, to who is now speaking in your mind. Because we tend to think that we think, but actually we don't think, we listen. We listen to what our ego is all the time saying. So we need to get to reflect, to get to filter who is using your mind capacity to feed from your energy, because our mind should be silenced at all times so the consciousness can manifest. So we need to be paying attention to our mind. If someone there is talking, we need to get to observe, who is this? This is hatred, this is resentment, this is greed, this is envy, this is whatever, loss, this is porn, this is gluttony, whatever, laziness, gossip, criticism, whatever. If you get to observe it, you get to judge and understand what is the psychological defect manifesting there, immediately you eliminate it. You ask your Divine Mother to disintegrate it. The same, you need to be looking to your heart. That is your feelings, your emotions, to see who is going on there. You are feeling anxiety, you're feeling anguish, you are feeling a lot of sentimentality. You need to filter that to see if it is a manifestation of your consciousness or if it is actually your ego manifesting. If you see it, that it is your ego, immediately you eliminate that. The same with your sex, everything that is going to activate your sexual energy, and everything that you want, that is every desire that you feel, you need also to pay attention to that, because from these three centers, mind, emotions, and sex, is through which every defect is manifested every day. And when it's trying to manifest, or when it is manifesting, immediately comes the request to the Divine Mother so that she proceeds to disintegrate it. That is actually the technique. As you can see, something very easy. We are going to achieve with this, start balancing our centers, as we learned in the lecture number 4. Because we are going to start achieving a right thinking, a right feeling, right action, and right talking by self-observing the centers and eliminating each one of the details of the ego that are manifesting. And with that work, with the death of the ego, we are going to achieve the scientific chastity, which is the balance of the centers. And as I was saying at the beginning, we are going to be able to ignite in us the sacred fire of the Kundalini, because for the sacred fire to be turn on in us, our energy needs to become pure. Right now, because of the ego and because of the fornication that we constantly do through the sex and through each one of our centers, our energy is polluted. And with this work of the death from moment to moment, to each detail, we are going to be saving our energy, and we are going to start purifying our energy, and that way we are going to ignite the sacred fire of the Kundalini, enter the initiating path, and start doing each one of the initiations of major mysteries, which are the creations of our internal bodies. We are going to be able to regenerate our physical body, turn it into a solar body, regenerate our vital body, and then start creating our astral body, then our mental body, our causal body, and we're going to join the Buddhic and the Atmic body. So we are going to create ourselves internally, and we are going to have the vehicles that will allow us to have the conscious manifestations in the different dimensions of nature. But it is not only this. Actually, when we are working with the disintegration of our ego, we can start, or we can learn to love humanity. Because no one can actually feel love for others if that person doesn't love himself. We actually learn to love humanity when we are really loving ourselves. And loving ourselves is loving our consciousness, because that is what we really are. And remember that of loved others as thyself. But for really loving others, we need to get to really know ourselves, to know our consciousness, to start liberating our consciousness from the psychological defects and the wisdom that we rescue from the death of all our wrong ways of being will translate into understanding towards other people. So we are going to start really loving others. And well, people, this has been today's lecture. This is the technique. I hope that I made it clear for you. Anyways, if you have at any point any question, you can leave the questions there, and I will be gladly solving any question that you have. Okay? So I want to invite you to our next lecture that we are going to be explaining next Wednesday. And in this one, we are going to be talking about the Christ, the universal and the individual Christ. So in that lecture, we are going to learn what it is, or what is that famous force that many masters throughout the ages have incarnated, and that is known as the Christ. We are going to get out of thinking that only one master, like for example, Master Jesus, was the Christ, the only Christ, or is the Christ. And actually, Christ is the force that master gets to incarnate. We are going to talk about that, and about many masters that have incarnated this force. And we are going to see what is the universal Christ, and we are going to see what is the individual Christ. So we are going to learn about the possibilities of incarnating that force that is latent within each one of us. Okay, so that is actually a very interesting lecture, and we are going to see it next Wednesday. Okay, so this is all for today. Thank you very much to all of you who have watched the video, and see you the next time. Ciao, ciao.